Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the talent breakout session of today's conference. And as I'm sure you all know by now, talent is one of the three major priorities of our strategic plan. My name is Ken Sauer, Senior Associate Commissioner and Chief Academic Officer here at the Commission. And I'm so privileged to be joined today by Mr. Dan Peterson. Dan is Vice President of Industry and Government Affairs for the Cook Group based in Bloomington, Indiana. And Dan has been with the Cook Group for more than 30 years, and he has a slide or two later on that will tell you more about the Cook Group, so I'll save that for his presentation. Dan sits on many boards, including the Indiana Bioscience Research Institute, BioCrossroads, Indiana Health Industry Forum, and the Indiana University Health South Central Region. He holds a BS in biology and an MBA in finance, both from Indiana University. And I will add that Dan has been a member of the commission since his initial appointment back in 2012. And on a more personal note, Dan is a member of the Academic Affairs Committee, the Academic Affairs and Quality Committee of the Commission, for which I provide staff support. So I have the privilege of working with Dan outside of the regular commission meetings as well. So with that, Liz Walker has kindly agreed to advance the slides for Dan and myself. So why don't we go to the next slide, please, Liz? There we are. So talent. Really, this is about equipping people to be successful. Certainly on the job today, people need to have the entry skills to enter the workforce, but they also need to be lifelong learners. We know there will be more disruptions like the one that we've gone through relative to COVID. There are other kinds of disruptions that are ahead, and people need the skill set to adopt and to meet the challenges of those disruptions. You know, as we think about what students need, what learners need, the commissioner mentioned in her remarks earlier today that we really need to think not only of the associate and baccalaureate and graduate degrees, critical as they are, but we also need to think of the full range of credentials. So that would include short and long-term certificates, and it would also include industry and professional certifications. And we need to make sure that whether we're talking about certificates or certifications, degrees, that they have the type of skills that learners need to be lifelong learners and to adapt to those disruptions that clearly are ahead. Mark Murrow, in his reference to the GPS report, focused on digital skills. Ryan Streeter also stressed the need for non-technical skills, teamwork, communication, critical thinking, and so on. And finally, we not only need to think about the entry into the workforce and reskilling and upskilling, but something that Ryan Streeter mentioned too, this notion of well-being, feeling fulfillment in the kinds of jobs that people have, and education training plays a key role in preparing people to have that kind of fulfillment. Next slide, please, Liz. So as we think about let's see, there we are. As we think about this, the blueprint and how to equip learners with the kinds of skills that they need, we certainly need to think of the jobs for the future. This is something, again, that Mark Streeter had mentioned in his remarks. So, for example, we need to think of some employer-driven learning models. He mentioned, actually it was Mark, I think, who mentioned apprenticeships. that are a way in which employers get directly involved in providing the knowledge and skill sets that their employees need or future employees need. In addition, the Commission, as part of its strategic plan, has emphasized the need for student engagement experiences with career relevance. So we're talking about internships and co-ops, community projects, even on-campus projects that might involve some capstone project, and perhaps with leaders from industry providing a critique of those projects. So the Commission has placed a lot of importance on trying to equip students with these student engagement experiences, and indeed to make sure that every program that is offered by our colleges and universities has such an experience available to students. And we also want to make sure that students can easily navigate the various learning opportunities that are available to them through our colleges and universities and other training providers. And to do that, we want to promote credential transparency, which is the subject of the next slide. So, and Liz, if you could advance the slide, please. There we go. So how do you make information about credentials more transparent, and how do you make it easier for learners to navigate all of this example? Well, there are a number of things that you need to do. You need to break down data silos, and we have a lot of those now, but the Commission is committed to breaking down as many of those as we can. We need to embrace linked open data standards. That's actually one of the recommendations that is in the Commission's strategic plan. Link that data together in ways that really data has never been linked together before. Make it accessible. Present data to the learner in an actionable way. In other words, that they have that information when they are making decisions about programs, and that typically occurs when they boil down their choices and are trying to compare programs to find the best pathway for them. Next slide, please, Liz. So the next slide is actually an example of several things here that I've just talked about. So this is a bar graph that shows the return on investment for certificates, associate degrees, and bachelor's degrees in different industry sectors, engineering, technology, health professions, business, and education among them. And this is a great example of how we have broken down data silos. The Commission use its completion data and match that with the Department of Workforce Development's unemployment insurance data to produce the bar graph that you see before you, which indicates the expected return on investment, the expected earnings that in this particular case, graduates of a particular program would have earned 5 years after graduation. So this is really so it's a great example of breaking down silos. It's a great example of having some high-level data that can be used in many different presentations as we try to invite students, whether they be high school students or college students, adults returning to the workforce, people needing to upskill or reskill. This is the kind of information that gets people to think about the kind of high-level choices that are available to them. But it's also an example of what we're doing to break down that data and make it even more granular, more actionable, more available to students as they make choices. And Liz, if you could advance the next slide, please. So there we go. What do students want to know? What kinds of questions do they ask when they try to make choices about what program to pursue? Well, the first bullet point here addresses what we just talked about. In addition to wanting to know how much a program costs, what the tuition is, etc. They also want to know what the return on investment would be, so they could balance those costs against expected earnings. They many students bring prior learning and experiences, valuable experiences that resulted in new knowledge and skill sets to an educational program. Does that count toward their degree requirements? Will they get credit for that and advanced standing in a program? If I'm interested in a particular field, do I have to earn a license? And if so, what programs prepare me for that license? And what about the pass rate on those licensure exams? If you're interested in being a registered nurse, one of the things you ought to be thinking about is how graduates of that particular program do on the licensing exam that all nursing students have to take in order to become a registered nurse. What about industry certifications? Certifications that employers are looking for in terms of hiring or career advancement. Will credits transfer if I start at one institution and for whatever reason want to move to another? Will my credits transfer? Is the program available online? We've had such a shift to online education as part of COVID that this has been a trend anyway, and I think more and more students will want to take programs that are available either fully online or in a blended fashion. So these are the kinds of questions, among many others, that students want to have answers to, and this slide represents one of the ways that we're trying to provide answers to students. We are part of something called Credential Engine, which is a national effort. We were the first state to use this particular platform to scale up Credential Engine, publish data on Credential Engine, and that was back in 2017. 4 years later, there are some 18 states that are using Credential Engine as a way to supply answers to the kinds of questions that were on the previous slide. The Credential Engine estimates that more than half of the states will be scaling up Credential Engine using this platform by the end of this year. I will, in addition to embracing linked open data and non-proprietary data standards, love to get into the technical features here, but now is not the time and place, but those are important. That Credential Engine, I want to stress, is a public service nonprofit, and its services are free to Hoosiers. And one of the roles that states have, and this is, I think, somewhat new to the Commission, to most state agencies of higher education, is to encourage the publishing and curating of data that goes on the credential registry, the sort of the data repository that Credential Engine has created. I'm going to end with one last slide, which will just tell you more about what we have published on Credential Engine. We have all of the certificate and degree programs at all 2-year and 4-year public campuses at all levels, both undergraduate and graduate. We do have a couple of private nonprofit institutions that are on the registry. We'd love to have more. We also have one proprietary institution that has published information about its programs on the registry. In all, Indiana has data on more than 3,000 credentials that are on the registry. At the Commission's June meeting, we'll spend much more time on this issue of credential transparency, explain in much greater detail what we're doing in connection with Credential Engine, and certainly would invite anybody who wants to know more about this to try to put the June meeting on their calendars. Now, this information is available to all learners, high school students, college students, adults re-entering the educational training sector, etc. But we also need specific public-private partnerships. They are so critical in providing opportunities for Hoosiers to gain entry into employment and to advance their careers. And one great example, really an amazing example, is what the Cook Group has done. And I'm going to turn this over to Dan Peterson to tell us more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Ken, very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Double checking here, make sure technology's working. So, yeah, thanks so much, Ken, both for the kind introduction and for the really, I think, very well aligned slides and background information that lead into my description of what we've been doing here over the last few years at Cook, that very much aligns with many of the perspectives and approaches that are recommended, both in the strategic planning document as well as what you heard from Teresa and Ryan and Mark in the first session today. So, as Ken said, I'm a longtime Cook guy. I've been, I think, now with the company for about 32 years, and had the great pleasure of working for our company and in our life sciences related industries throughout that period. The reason I mention that is I think it's interesting, the progression of experiences that I've had and how that's provided learning around much of what Ken described, related to lifelong learning, if you will. So I came actually into Cook after coming back to Bloomington to get my MBA, but I had a medical background for a few years after college. And if the ability to get prior learning availability were there at the time, it would be interesting to go back and see how that might change. But it's really important, I think, the evolution that we've had throughout our company and our industry, and how education, and in particular higher education in its various forms, aligns with that, and very importantly. So I really appreciate being involved in this work, and have been for a long time, as Ken said. I can tell you I'm involved in lots of life sciences related efforts, as Ken described, but there is nothing that has been more important or enjoyable, informative, and impactful for me personally, but also I think impactful beyond that, than my work with the Higher Ed Commission. And Teresa and Ken and the entire team are just stellar, as I think you all know, and as are all of my colleagues on the commission and our wonderful university partners. We've really got a fabulous system here and resources in Indiana. So one which I know came out in the GPS study, and in which we look to advance fully. So I want to tell you a little bit about the Cook story, if you will, and as it relates to the topic here. For those of you who don't know, it's obviously a very interesting entrepreneurial story that has its roots in Indiana. In 1963, Bill Cook, upper right-hand corner of the slide, began a company. I'm not going to go into great detail here because some of you may have heard it, but began a company in the spare bedroom of his apartment based on a new technology that had been developed in Europe to access the vascular system in what we today call a minimally invasive way. And he learned about it from a cousin of his. Long story short, he started the company with his wife Gail, who's on the lower right, and 1-year-old at the time son Carl. And they started that in this apartment complex, which is actually not too far from where I live, and it's still standing today. Fabulous story. So Liz, if you would skip to the next slide. Starting with 3 little products in 1963, that technology, Bill and our growing company, became integrally aligned with clinical thought leaders across the globe that were developing not just the early diagnostic products that were to be revolutionize medicine, if you will, but also the therapeutic products that really have revolutionized medicine. Think laparoscopic surgery, think any form of, think coronary stents, think about those types of products that again, are accessed or placed in the body through a small hole versus an open surgical approach. And you can see these are examples. I won't belabor it, but examples of products that are revolutionary and around today all across the globe. The interesting pencil drawing in the middle of the cross pipe wrenches is actually a drawing that was hand done by probably the first physician leader in this field, a guy named Charles Dotter. And his view and vision was that the plumbing, the vascular system in the body, the blood vessels, and if you will, are nothing more than the plumbing of the body. And we are able to go in and fix plumbing in our house. Why not be able to go in and fix plumbing in the body? And so that was the evolution of the field of minimally invasive medicine. Next slide, please, Liz. So as of today, you can see this is actually a couple years old, maybe a year old slide. So the numbers have changed a little bit, but we're a large, very large company, multinational company based in Indiana, of course, and based in Bloomington, our home. But we've got over actually close to 13,000 employees. We have manufacturing on multiple continents, 2 major clinical divisions servicing virtually all parts of medicine, other than we don't do anything in orthopedics really, or eyes and a few other parts of the body, but everything else we pretty much touch. Next slide, please. To bring it home, again, founded in 1963, we've got close to 7,000 employees here in Indiana, and you can see the geographic spread of those. Of course, our origins are very much tied to medical devices, medical technology, and you can see the different names of those companies. But you can also probably notice there are a few that don't necessarily fully align with the life sciences world. As an example, you can see the French Lick West Baden Resort in southern Indiana. Of course, every good medical technology company needs a hotel and hospitality section, right? Spacing the word. I say that in jest, but it's been a great love for the Cook family and the Cook company for decades, which is a time for another story down the road, but won't belabor that here. But it gives us the point of the slide here from my perspective. We're a large organization within Indiana that is both geographically very diverse. It's diverse from an industry sector to a number of degrees, which I won't belabor. But it also is diverse in the type of people that we employ from all across the state, all the way from people that don't have a high school diploma, all the way up to physicians, lots of PhDs, and everything in between. So we see and touch, a big aspect of Indiana's population and workforce. So next slide, Liz. So this slide, what I wanted to kind of start with in the description is, this is a slide that we put together here a couple of years ago as we started to think about how we think about our future employees, our communities, our citizens, if you will, and how we attract, retain, grow our employment base. And I think through this slide and what I'm going to describe from a project standpoint, again, will hopefully align really, really well with what you heard in the sessions previous to this, in Teresa's comments and in the GPS study discussion and in the strategic plan. When you think about, as you listen to this, think about learner-centered approaches. Think about very much talent-driven and future-focused. Think about equity and opportunity for everyone potentially to reach their potential. And I hopefully those things will resonate. When we started to think about how we look at our workforce, traditionally we were more focused on, if you look at the line kind of to the right that shows the progression, we were quite often, focused on the kind of the better job, the career, and beyond aspects of our thinking and how we engage in that process as an employer. What we started to think about and start to act upon is how do we look at the full spectrum of the population, and how do we have an ability, how can we be part of the solution for those people, those populations, and at the same time help grow our workforce in lots of important ways, not just from a number standpoint, but from a diversity of thought, a diversity of opportunity standpoint. So we started to look at what are the barriers for opportunity. What are the barriers that are keeping people out of the workforce, or not able to access moving up the workforce and getting into opportunities at Cook and other types of advanced industry opportunities going forward. And you can see all those that we've identified. You can see the underemployed, the homelessness situation, lack of education, incarceration, substance abuse, physical disabilities, and we had touched upon a few of those things in the past. As an example, disabilities. We have a long-time partnership and continue with an organization called Stone Belt down here in Bloomington, which provides work opportunity for folks with disabilities, and we've had a 40-plus year partnership with them. But what we recognized is that we need to get more involved in these other issues and try and help work through some of those solutions and provide opportunity. And we're in various stages of doing that across the board. So next slide, please, Liz. What it ultimately led to is the development of what we've kind of internally branded as an approach called My Cook Pathway. And it takes into account all of those different stages along the way of someone's potential development. We started, I'm going to describe each of these briefly, but I want to start first and foremost with the on the far left side, the high school equivalency program. That was really one of our first real initiatives as part of this package. And what we recognized down in the Bloomington region, where we draw from, there were close to 30,000 people in our region that we draw from, 30,000 people age 18 to working age adults, if you will, that did not have a high school diploma or GED at the time, or high school equivalency today. That's a lot of people. And as we all know, people fall out of the system, if you will, for all sorts of reasons. And what we determined is we wanted to see if we could try and provide opportunity for some of those folks. We, like many employers, had a requirement, typically where you had to have a high school diploma or GED before you could work in our manufacturing operations for all sorts. We're an FDA regulated industry. It's very driven by process and procedure, and you have to have strong written or reading and written skills. You have to analyze information that's provided in the specifications. It used to be paper, now it's electronic. You've got to have some reasonable math skills. You've got to have a variety of capabilities. Nothing too crazy by any means, but we viewed, like many, kind of the high school diploma and GED as a proxy for having those skills. When we saw and thought about 30,000 people that were out there just in our region that didn't have that degree or that certificate, if you will, we also recognized that there's all sorts of reasons for that. It certainly doesn't mean that those folks don't have the capability or ability to achieve that and to be very productive employees for us. So we started a program in partnership. At the time we started the program, it was a partnership between ourselves and the adult basic ed group in town, where we, and today it's that partnership is with Ivy Tech, actually. So we employ people that are interested in joining this program, this high school equivalency program. We employ them 40 hours a week. We pay them full time. They spend basically half their time working either in our janitorial crew or in our cafeteria. And while the other half of their time, they study for their high school equivalency exam. And coaches for that through Ivy Tech. We provide all the materials. They spend, again, 40 hours. They get paid for 40, work half time, and study half time. and then usually in the 7-8 week range, they will graduate from that program with their high school equivalency, and then we immediately move them into full-time positions, in any number of areas within the company, and they get full benefits, et cetera. So it's been a great approach. We started this here just a couple years ago, and we've had a couple hundred graduate from that program and come into our workforce, which has been fantastic. That then is, in a sense, what I'm going to describe as kind of the stackable opportunity for people. So the next set described here is our associate's degree partnership with Ivy Tech, which is not just in Bloomington region by all means now, it's across the state, and we're trying to duplicate those types of programs in our other states that we operate. But it's with the Ivy Tech program, there's 10 different degrees, associate's degrees that are provided that our folks can choose from and go through and complete. In addition, we've got a bachelor's and master's degree program where we have partnerships with other institutions like Purdue Global, like Western Governors, a number of others, and we're always looking to see where other opportunities exist there. But we have partnerships with those institutions in the sense that where it all comes together is we have modified a tuition assistance program to allow folks to access those opportunities. And we, for decades, had actually, Liz, can you go forward? I lost track of my slides. Sorry about that. This is the slide around the high school equivalency that gives that description, and I apologize, but what folks have the opportunity to do at Cook now is through our tuition assistance program, they can go and take any number of areas of coursework, whether it be at the associate's, bachelor's, master's level, and for virtually no out-of-pocket cost to them, they can go through and complete those degrees. And we do so in partnership with these institutions, not just the ones I referenced, but others, where we pay the tuition up front versus having the traditional approach where the student or the employee had to sign up for the class, get approval for it, take the class, get a C or better, and then are reimbursed sometime down the road. We pay the tuition up front, or we get the institution, collaborate with the institution to have that payment deferred until the completion of the program. The employee still has to get a C or better to qualify, but they don't have to upfront the cost. And if what we found is in the first year, we've had this for a couple years now, in the first year of implementation, we had typically around 100 people that were accessing our tuition reimbursement program that we'd had for decades. We went immediately to about 1,000 people that were accessing it and using it. We've stayed in that 700 to 1,000 range for the last couple of years with strong completion rates, strong persistent rates, and that it's the combination of all that. It's really the partnership of meeting the employees where they are, meeting those people where they are with their needs, and helping them work through, moving through, and going as far as they want and as are able. That has really, I think, changed the dynamic for our people and for us. So again, that you can. So basically, the answer is, as someone who in the community who doesn't have a high school diploma, you can come to work for us, go through those programs. You can go all the way up and get your master's degree for no out-of-pocket cost, in a sense. And that comes from partnerships with the institutions, as well as us being able to use the full $5,250 a year that is allowed by the government to be tax-free to the employee. We provide that payment for those educational services for those employees. And so you can basically get through that in that regard and come out no pocket. It's been fabulous. We also have a program that I showed on the slide that focuses on professional development. So people that want to get licenses, get additional certifications, and that sort of thing. We have a program that is all rolled into that. So Liz, if you would, one more slide, please. Thank you. I couldn't remember how many slides I included. So yeah, I mean that gives the overview of the program, and I can go certainly answer questions in more depth around any of those aspects, but also kind of a lot of the broader thinking and work on that front. I did want to mention one other aspect that's part of this program, and that goes back to the barrier slide, if you will, as we recognize that those different populations of people that were really challenged in meeting their goals for life, as they thank you, Liz. As they dealt with that, we recognized that we wanted to be a part of those solutions. Not all those solutions, if you will, could be provided by us alone. You think about when you look at the folks like previously incarcerated, substance abuse, et cetera. We realized that we didn't have the capability or knowledge to effectively work alone in those spaces. So the partnerships that we have developed over the last few years to help deal with that are, I think, a significant part of the story. As an example, a couple of years ago, we worked with Goodwill organization, Goodwill of Central and Southern Indiana, which is, if you don't know all the good work that Goodwill in Indiana does, I encourage you to look at it, because it's not just the retail establishments that you typically think of with Goodwill. They have both what's called the Excel Center high schools that they've developed, adult high schools in Indiana, but also what's called their commercial services model. And we worked with them to bring both of those resources to the Bloomington community, to bring both an Excel Center high school here as well as a commercial services facility. And that commercial services facility is one where we outsource light manufacturing, parts assembly to them, and they then employ what's typically a challenged population of employees. So think of folks that have just come out of prison, that are struggling with a variety of the barriers that are listed on the left, substance abuse, et cetera. And they have all the wraparound services as part of their program to support those folks and it's not a linear path for these folks. They make headway and then they fall back. They make headway, they fall back. But they've developed a really great program to help, in a collaborative way, work with those people to move through. And for those that really want and are willing, they have great success in moving through their program and then being able to then come to work for us and other employers that they probably wouldn't have been able to do if they had just come out originally, if you will. And so it's been a fabulous partnership there with them. And what that led to here just in the last number of months is the announcement that Cook has made that we're in partnership with Goodwill building a facility to employ about 100 folks in the Near East side of Indianapolis, in a traditionally very high poverty, high diversity community, and really try and put a stake in the ground and bring some solutions and resources to the table to help that community grow with opportunity. So those are the types of projects that we're working on that really do, I think, align beautifully with the work of all of our higher ed institutions in our state and our higher ed commission in how we're thinking about advancing Indiana. So I let me stop there, because I know we want to have enough time for questions. But I'm happy to answer any.
And I will simply add, I first found out about my Cook pathway a couple of years ago when we hosted a convening of the 12-state Midwestern Higher Education Compact, and Dan was on a panel that presented at that convening. And right after Dan got finished, the entire group broke out in spontaneous applause. And I dare say, had we not been in a virtual convening today, we might have had exactly the same reaction, because it's really a terrific and amazing program.
I'm not hearing you right now, Ken. I don't know if that's just
Oh,
me or
can
everyone.
you hear me, Liz? Or
I can hear you,
Now I
Ken.
can.
oh, okay. So I hope that well, I just paid you a high compliment, Dan, and I'd be happy to repeat it.
I heard the part.
Yeah.
I heard the part about applause, and it was certainly not related to the person delivering the message or the delivery. It's about the good work, by all means. Yeah.
Right. Well, in the interest of time, we do have a couple of questions. Actually, we have many questions we wanted to ask you, Dan. But I wanted to ask a couple that had to do with my Cook pathway. And then Liz is tracking questions that
I lost you again, Ken.
people may have
Liz,
put in the
hearing
chat.
Ken?
What's that?
Yes, I can hear Ken. Seems like
Okay.
Dan's having a few audio problems. Can you hear me, Dan? Can you hear me, Dan?
Now I can. It may have been my earphones.
Okay, so you can hear me now.
Now I can. Sorry about
All right,
that.
great. So let me start off with a couple of questions, and then I will. Now, I had an echo problem, which I think I solved there. So let me begin by asking a question about my Cook pathways. What were the biggest challenges that you and your colleagues at Cook faced in getting this off the ground and scaling up so that it accommodated 700 to 1,000 individuals? What were the challenges?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's logistic challenges and operational challenges, but it really was not that. It wasn't as difficult as you might think. I mean, the tuition assistance change to that program, if you will, was more a philosophical approach and change that was needed. That wasn't, we like many companies had a very traditional tuition assistance program, tuition reimbursement program, and felt like, if you pay the money up front, you were going to get taken advantage of by people and they're going to leave, and, you're paying to educate them so they can go work for someone else, if you will, et cetera. So once we really thought through that, and once our team really listened to people, employees, about what it was that they wanted, what it was that was keeping them from advancing their own interests, their own careers at Cook, their own educational pathways. We recognize the upfront payment is, for a lot of people, is really a big deal. And their out of pocket, is having to front that out of pocket up front. It is, it's just another. It may not be the only roadblock to them continuing their education, but it adds to the mix. And really, what we wanted to do was make the right choice for those folks, the easy choice, not the hardest choice. And so that switch was a big deal. We eliminated the clawback. Many companies have a clawback for if you pay tuition assistance to an employee and they leave. They would have to pay it back, prorated by how long they stayed, if you will. We eliminated that program, again, making the right choice the easy choice. And we just said, if somebody advances their education and they decide to leave, well, we've hopefully made them better prepared to be, achieve their dreams and be productive citizens in our community, hopefully, and as well. But so far that's played out. And you think about it, to me, you think about it after the fact, it's like, well, why wouldn't this be a logical approach? Because think of the loyalty and the partnership mentality that builds with employees in doing something like this. So that was, the philosophical side was probably a first hurdle or one of the hurdles. obviously the setting up resources and assets or people that can help administer those programs. Again, not that huge a deal. Working with the educational partners was again a step that was important, but boy, Ivy Tech and others that we've worked with have all been so accommodating and really been fabulous to work with on that. That was, maybe again there were going to be expectations up front. Oh, is this going to be, can we really do this? But once we got into it, it's like, yeah, this makes great sense. We learned a lot from others. I would tell you, like the Ivy Tech program, and I always forget the Achieve Your Degree program, I think it's called, is really what we modeled it through. And we learned a ton from Old National Bank, actually, who had already implemented work in that arena. So we shared a lot of information. They shared a lot of information with us, and we in turn have shared a lot of information with others. So overall, I would say that a lot of these efforts have turned out to not be tremendously difficult or costly or challenging. It's really about just kind of changing your mindset, collaborating effectively with the partners, and being, recognizing that you learn as you go, and you have to make some changes along the way to make it, again, student-centered and learner-centered. I think that's we've had little tweaks and changes there to make it most effective for our learners.
Let me just ask about the cost. Cook is a big company, but still, with 700 to 1,000 people in the program, the tuition costs can really add up. What would you say to a company that was thinking about this? How would you make the case from, let's say, an ROI perspective, from their investment that is required?
Yeah, that's a common question we get, and it's a logical question. Of course, we continue to try and gather data and try and paint that picture effectively around quote ROI, if you will, and retention, increased retention, diverted cost of not having to retrain people, of course, is a big part of it. I guess what you have to, I think, you have to go into it, in my mind, in not having it just making a decision like this based on specific near-term financial costs and ROI. There's a lot of intangibles that we believe far outweigh whatever your analytical view is of the annual cost of providing that tuition payment, and the various financial impacts from that perspective. We can't quantify all of the benefits and tangible aspects of that. You can model it, but at the end of the day, we're not quite sure. It's part of the puzzle. You just kind of, you have to do the math and see what works for you. But again, it's a lot less costly than we thought it would be, to be honest, other than the tuition piece. And again, we've had that tuition program overall all along, where we just reimbursed it versus paying it up front. So that paying up front obviously allows more people to access it, or that want to access it. But my goodness, we've had, I've got some numbers. We've only had this for a couple of years. We graduated about 400 people from the program, not the HSE program, but the other programs in various forms, bachelor's, master's. We've had some doctorate graduates, and have great retention of those folks. So it's however you quantify it, it's in our minds been a really very, very positive success story.
Liz, are there any questions that you're picking up that would you want to throw in here?
Dan, why don't you go ahead and mute? Maybe that'll. limit some of the kickback, hopefully. There we go. That's better. Okay. So no, I'm following along in the chat. Thank you so much, everybody that's been engaging so far. Dan, I hope you don't mind. I found an overview of my Cook pathway online and as a presentation that was given, and I've gone ahead and linked that here just in case people, a couple of different between private messages and comments here, just people interested in how they take this work to scale. You kind of already talked about that. So if there's anything that you haven't said yet that you want to add, but just, I can speak from my personal experience here at the commission. I started, been here a little bit, and one of the first initiatives that I really helped with here at the commission was the You Can Go Back effort, where we targeted those that have some college education but didn't finish. They dropped out for some reason or another. And one of the avenues in which we tried to engage that population was through employers. And you said it well, Dan, that the barriers that exist for people that want to go back to education, but they're and with an employer partner in mind, right? But unable to provide that funding or that payment up front, and they need reimbursement from the employer afterward. I think the way that your model does it, where it's covered, it's that's not an issue that the student has to think about, is critical to get more people across the finish line. So that's not really a question, but more of just an observation and comment that we love this model. It's why we wanted you to come today, just because it's between our experience here in the office reaching this population and other studies we're finding and all of it all suggests that employers that take an active role in this and I mean, as you said, there's almost the philosophical switch of this being important and this being what matters to your organization. It's just so important. So we just are really happy to have you today to talk about all of this great work.
So let me ask one more question. I think we're then probably have to sign off to give people a chance to get to the closing session. But Dan, you've been, My Cook Pathway has been focusing on students, people who are in the workforce, they're out of high school, they may not have gotten their high school diploma. Does Cook do anything with respect to students who are still in high school in terms of maybe introducing them to some workplace experience, sort of getting them interested in the kinds of things that they might do after they leave high school? I think Mark Morrow said something about apprenticeships, and there's a lot of talk in Indiana about youth apprenticeships. Anything going on along those lines?
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, I think overall, we're doing a number of things on that front, and all of it is critical because so much of it helps with the awareness piece for students. I mean, you would think that people that live in and around Bloomington would know, as an example, what opportunities exist at Cook and in our industry, et cetera. But it's just folks don't necessarily have a natural understanding of what the work opportunities are, even in their own backyard. And so the more we're trying to do much more in our areas to get into the schools and try and provide exposure and understanding of what it really what the work is like. And a lot of times what we find is that people just kind of put self-imposed limits on themselves or barriers on themselves because they think, oh, I could never work in the life sciences. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a techno person, if you will. And that, far from the truth, as people know, we all have lots of different roles and opportunities. So just breaking down that those misconceptions is critical, providing the awareness and the relevancy, hopefully, to the education that they're going through. So we've got a long and really robust internship program that has traditionally been more focused at the higher ed level. It's very, I think you mentioned before, capstone in one of your comments. I mean, it's a really fabulous program that we've recruited a lot of people permanently from, where it's really substantive work that they do in any number, almost virtually every area of our company. Involves very very substantive types of jobs and programs that they're working on. Involves capstones where you have people from all across the organization come to the capstone presentations. Many of the programs and projects that interns have worked on have been implemented and retained in the company. So, I mean, it's not just making photocopies, as they say. So that's really good. We struggle a little bit more with how to reach into the high schools and provide those internship opportunities, especially for kids under 18. It's a very controlled manufacturing environment. So we're trying to figure out better ways of doing that. We have a lot of great interested volunteer talent within different parts of our company that love doing that type of stuff and going to job fairs or going in and working in schools with project-based work, and et cetera. COVID, we've had great plans to ramp that up, and it's gotten in the way. But we'll get back to it, of course, going forward. But no, it's really important. I think just the only other comment I make is down in our region we have what's called ROI, Regional Opportunity Initiatives, which is a regional development organization that was Lilly Endowment funded number of years ago, and the biggest part of their work is education and workforce, working primarily on the K-12 side, especially with bringing together opportunities just like you're talking about here with the 27 school districts in the region, and how to bring the employer sectors that are strong here engaged in all that work. So we do it as a company, but we also do it as part of a more collective approach, which I think is really critical.
Well, thanks so much, Dan, for being with us in this breakout session, your presentation, your comments. Thanks to Liz for facilitating, and thanks to all of you who selected this breakout session. And we'll try to go through the chats. If there were some comments or questions that we didn't pick up on, we'll try to respond to those after the conference is over. So with that, I think we'll close out the breakout session. So people can get back to the final session. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, everybody.